Welcome to the YourTown television program. My name is Jeff Kline, your host for this Naval Postgraduate School Foundation segment, where we highlight both students and faculty at the Naval Postgraduate School, sort of their past, what they're doing now, and their research areas. And for this particular segment, we have two students who will be joining us, Lieutenant Sydney Stone and Lieutenant Chris Popa. Welcome.
Thank you, sir.
Now, before we get started on what you're doing at MPS, we like to talk a little bit about what you did in the Navy, or better yet, why you even joined the Navy. And that's good because sometimes the local audience likes to know that, particularly the high school students. So, Sydney, what made you decide to join the Navy?
Yes, sir. So actually, I don't necessarily come from a Navy background.
Right.
I don't have any family members that joined the Navy prior to me making this decision. Actually, at the same time, I made the decision to join ROTC to go the path of getting a degree. I went to the University of Nebraska and did ROTC there.
Now, are you from Nebraska originally?
I'm not, no, sir. I'm actually from Southern California. I have family in Nebraska, and so I was able to go to school there.
Okay, there's a connection there. I was going to say.
Yes, sir. There's definitely a connection.
Most Southern California people don't run to go to Nebraska.
Not at all.
There's nothing
No,
wrong
sir.
with Nebraska now. I'm from
I
that
understand.
area. My family is actually from the Kansas, Nebraska area. So
Yes, sir.
okay.
I completely understand. But
So that must have been a new culture for you then.
it was, absolutely. Very much so.
Football's
And so,
big there.
it is,
and
yes.
corn.
Yes. Been a Husker fan since day one. So,
That's right.
So always been ready
So
to
what
go
did
there.
you study?
Industrial engineering.
Oh, did you really? You're an industrial engineer.
Yes,
Great.
sir. Mm-hmm. So my sister, actually, at the same time that I made the decision to do ROTC, she actually enlisted in the Navy. So we kind of made the decision at the same time, two different paths to do essentially the same thing. So I was able to get my degree right off the bat while she was working on a ship. And so she influenced my decision quite a bit as well to help kind of steer me towards surface warfare and just be able to get the experience in that area while I was getting my degree and help steer me towards.
So where in Southern California did you go to high school?
I am from Riverside and Temecula area, so
Okay.
about an hour north or so of San Diego.
Okay, great. And Chris, how about you?
Like Sydney, I also didn't really have a family connection to the military, so I joined ROTC and went to Vanderbilt University in Nashville, Tennessee.
And you're from that area too?
I'm
or?
from Houston. I grew up in Texas.
Okay,
I
well,
was
that's
following a
sort of
girlfriend
close,
at the
not
time.
quite.
Yeah.
Right? That's not as big as cultural jump. we'll
No,
put
it
that
wasn't.
way.
And I'm really happy with that decision. But yeah, at the time, it was. I wanted to get away from Rice and from the Houston side and go see
Right.
the rest of the country. And so for me, it's a pretty natural choice to go to Nashville. So I did ROTC and went there with no real idea of what portion of the military I wanted to join. In fact, I was telling Sydney this earlier. When I was looking between Army and Navy ROTC, I pulled up both websites, and the Navy ROTC said they would give me $150,000 for college, and Army said they'd give me $80,000.
It was an economic decision.
It was the exact same program. They just hadn't updated the website, and I didn't know it. So I figured, well, the Navy's going to give me more money, and they're going to cover Vanderbilt, so that's where I'm going. That's what I want to do.
Well,
so.
the Navy's fortunate that they were updating their website for
Exactly.
crying out loud. That's good.
So I joined and did ROTC with no real goal in mind, SWO or aviator until after.
And what did you study in
Mechanical engineering.
Oh,
I was
mechanical
in-
engineering.
yes, sir.
Okay, great.
And then after my freshman year, I did Corpsman for the little summer cruise we have to do as a
Yeah,
freshman.
Corps Mid is that, midshipman goes around in different
Yes,
places.
sir.
Yeah.
And I actually was in San Diego for Corpsman, and I got to do a flight in the T6, which is one of the training aircraft that we use now for flight school. And after takeoff, 20 seconds after takeoff, I knew I'm going to be an aviator.
It's
that's what I wanted to
amazing.
do.
That experience convinced
real
me I
quick.
wasn't going to be an aviator. Well, let's go back to your career then. So, Sydney, you were commissioned and you decided to go surface line.
Yes,
What
sir.
was your first ship?
USS Stockdale out of San Diego, California, destroyer.
So, it's a destroyer. It's one of the newer Arleigh Burke destroyers?
106, yes, sir.
Okay, and so what'd you do on it?
Actually got to move around the different departments quite a bit. Started out in engineering. I figured that made the most sense since I had the engineering background.
Sure.
So that worked for
So
me.
what'd you do in engineering?
I was initially in the damage control side of things. So
Oh,
I
wow.
was,
Okay, so you
served
had
kind of
ship-wide
as-
responsibilities.
Yes, sir. So
Right.
I kind of served under the damage control assistant as a repair officer. I did that for a few months and then actually switched over to electrical, the electrical side. So I did that for a little bit and then actually also got the opportunity to switch departments and then went over into the operations department. So I was fortunate to get to see a couple different areas of the ship while I was
And
there.
what'd you do in the operations department?
I served as the assistant operations officer, so I just worked directly with the operations.
again, that was the entire department
Yes, sir.
area. And what aircraft did you fly, Chris?
I flew the MH-60 Romeo with HSM-71 out of San Diego. They are
Okay.
the first squadron out there on the West Coast to actually get the Romeo, which came out about 10 years ago.
So what does the Romeo do other than what our older SH-60s used to do?
Sure. So it's kind of the integration of some of the different aircraft that we've now retired, but we're primarily looking at SUW as well as ASW. So we're looking for surface vessels. We're looking for small contacts that maybe are outside of the radar surveillance area of some of our larger ships, and we're also looking for ASW. So now we're the primary organic airborne sensor for the strike group, looking for submarines. Yes, sir, and that the outer line of defense for submarines.
Well, now, did you deploy on big ships, or were you on destroyers, or what type of ships did you go on?
So our squadron is carrier-based, but the way that the Romeo community does carrier-based deployments are that we actually have the XO and the CO and most of the aircraft on the carrier, and then we have a couple...
Oh, the entire squadron?
The entire squadron deploys,
okay.
yes, sir.
Right.
And so I was actually on the cruiser, the shotgun cruiser, for the John C. Cennis strike group. I did workups on her ship, actually.
Oh, is that right? Did you know each other?
We did, yeah. Actually, first day of class, I was like, hey, we did workups together.
I'll be darned.
So
wait a minute. So the DET comes. So the squadron is on the carrier,
yes,
and DETs then deploy from the carrier to the smaller in the battle group.
Yes, sir. So there might be a period of time where I don't see the commanding officer for about a month, but I mean I'm in direct communication with the carrier every day, sending emails and flight schedules, and we are still under their purview and working with them. But I have a department head as my boss rather than a 05 as my boss.
So this is a change from back in the dinosaur ages when I was in it. So we don't have DETs anymore that actually go on the ships themselves. They're sort of borrowed from. Was this the advent of the new SH-60 Romeo of doing this way of doing business? Or?
I believe so. Yeah. Now we've moved away. It's still a detachment, but it's called a combat element, a cell. So we different name. I think it's the same structure, but the expeditionary side of the house, like HSM 35, for example, on the West Coast, they will do independent steaming operations. They will send out a small DET. They'll still go out with a single ship, but yeah, we were carrier-based with smaller cells that worked in conjunction with the carrier-based deployments.
Well, now, you said you fell in love with naval aviation and a fixed-wing trainer.
I did.
And you ended up in helicopters.
I did, yes, sir.
Which is kind of cool, actually, because you can see the water and get close. So
yeah,
what made you decide to go helicopters?
One, my height. I'm 6'7".
That's a little trowel.
Yeah, I'm a little large for the average cockpit. So I was actually disqualified, but I knew it going into it.
Because of height?
Yes, sir. And that was really never my goal to begin with.
You got to be a wee man to be a fighter pilot. Is that what you're saying?
I actually have a buddy who's 6'4", 6'5", and he's a fighter pilot, but it's a tight fit. So I figured I didn't really want to be crawling into that cockpit every day.
You're almost as big as the aircraft for crying out.
Yeah, just move it over here real quick. But yeah, I had a couple flights in flight school that were low-level navigation, and I really enjoyed those. So we were doing, like you said, low and slow, and you can see the ground, and those type of flights really interested me, rather than flying at 18,000 plus feet.
Well, Sydney, where did you deploy to?
We actually deployed together. Like he mentioned, we were in the John C. Cennis strike group, and so we did our deployment into 7th Fleet in the South China Sea.
Okay.
So we were able to stop a couple places along the way that were very cool. Got to see Guam and Korea. But our primary focus of operations was the contested islands in the South China Sea, providing additional presence in the South China Sea for activities on the Korean Peninsula.
So did you do a freedom of navigation operation through there as well?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so, but you pulled into Korea as well?
We did.
Chosin or what port?
Busan.
Busan.
Mokpo.
I'm sorry?
Mokpo.
Oh, Mokpo.
Yeah, so it's kind of in the southwestern corner of Korea. Yeah.
Okay.
Small little fishing town, but it's a blast.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to say, when the sailors arrived, though, they make parties.
We had a great time. Mokpo is a great city. Thank you, Mokpo. Yeah.
So where else did you go? Did you have any other good port calls there? Or? Remember, this might be a recruiting video.
Sure.
For future high school.
Yeah, I actually particularly enjoyed the Philippines. I know I'd get in trouble if I didn't mention it, but I actually got engaged in the Philippines.
Did you really?
My girlfriend
Fantastic.
and now wife came out and visited me, and we were in Manila for about a week, and so I got engaged there. But the Philippines were
Did you go up to Baguio at all?
No, we stayed within Manila. We were kind of restricted
in
our area of operations there, but we had a blast. It was a really good time.
Well, that's a great thing I know about the Navy is you work hard at sea, you do interesting and challenging and sometimes dangerous activities, but then you get to see a lot of part of the world. 3 days at a time.
Yes, sir.
And so you see as much as you possibly can. So let's talk a little bit about why you came to NPS. You said a little bit about that before the show started, but both of you are systems engineering and analysis students. So Sydney, why did you pick NPS and why did you pick that curriculum?
Sir, so it's actually kind of an interesting situation. I initially, in my career path as a SWO, NPS doesn't fit where I was
So
able
what was
to.
surface line officer, surface warfare officer,
Officer,
right?
yes, sir. And so I was actually given the opportunity by my chain of command on USS Stockdale, who presented me with the opportunity to, upon completion of my first tour, to actually look at going to NPS. So
Right.
I knew I wanted to get my graduate education, but I did not expect it at that point in my career. So they offered me the opportunity to come to NPS immediately following my first tour, prior to starting my second tour.
Right.
So I jumped at the opportunity, of course, coming to Monterey, being from Southern California and then San Diego. Staying in Monterey seemed like the perfect situation for me. And I saw systems engineering analysis, which was actually very similar to my undergraduate degree with industrial engineering, of having both the technical background as well as the side of operate.
Mathematics. Sure.
Yes, sir. So it just seemed like the perfect situation for me.
So you're going back to your second division officer tour after this?
Yes, sir.
And any idea where you might go?
I actually just got orders. Yes, sir. I am headed to USS Porter out of Rhoda.
Oh,
Spain.
wow. That's going to be a lot of fun.
Yes, sir.
Have you ever been to Spain before?
I have not.
Oh, you'll love it. Absolutely.
That's what I hear.
You know those top-up little restaurants around? They're all based on Rhoda restaurants.
Perfect.
So you're going to have a great time. And Chris, why did you come to MPS and pick SCA?
Sure. Upon graduation from Vanderbilt, I decided I never wanted to go back to academia. I was done.
You
I was
were-
done.
That was it.
I got my bachelor's.
You
I'm
got,
done.
That's right. You got your engineering
out.
degree. That's good enough.
But after being a pilot, specifically a Romeo pilot, we're in the books for both the systems and how the systems operate for the helicopters and stuff. And so that kind of reinstilled some motivation for me to go back to school and kind of pursue this more as a full-time career path. So I looked at some of my different options coming out of my first sea tour, and I really didn't mind getting out of the cockpit. I wanted to see what else was out there. A lot of my peers decided to do Reserve Officer Training Corps instructors,
Right.
ROTC. I liked that idea, but then you were restricted to attending the school at which you were an instructor. So
Right.
if you didn't get the school you wanted, and they didn't necessarily have a great engineering program, it might not really benefit you. So I looked at all my options, and I decided that NPS for me was the one that made the most sense. It was great for my wife and I, and it was coming off a deployment, so it was perfect. So yeah, that's kind of how I chose this particular career path.
Well, that is great. Now, the Systems Engineering Analysis program doesn't require a thesis. It requires something much more challenging in my viewpoint, and that is you coordinate a large cross-campus study and then publish a very large report with a lot of different students from different curriculum. So tell us what your project was as your SCA Systems Engineering Analysis project, and what have you learned from it?
Sure. Like we had discussed earlier, when we were looking into this program, we decided, well, the SEA curriculum doesn't actually require a thesis. It's a capstone. That's
Capstone project.
That's up my alley. That's what I want. I want to do a group project that's going to be easier and it's going to be more fun and cohesive. And as we found out that it's a lot of work.
It's much more challenging.
Yeah, it's been fun. Our group is actually comprised of about 19 different people. We have international students. We have a couple of Marine Corps officers, and we have people, like you mentioned, from all across the campus. So our particular project, we decided to focus on distributed maritime operations and the shift from carrier-centric operations to more distributed lethality and distributed maritime operations, specifically for us in the littoral. So we're looking near the South China Sea area, and we're looking at the interaction between different vessels, different tactics, different countermeasures we may or may not employ, and really trying to figure out the relative strengths and maybe some differences that we haven't seen operationally and how we can employ something like, say, jamming with preemptive chaff, or if we're able to get one more destroyer in that strike group, does it really help us out, and how does it help us out? So some of the stuff we've looked at, we've used some discrete event level modeling simulation to figure out, well, if we do this or we do that, what are the actual implications down the line, and how would that potentially benefit somebody who's either developing a force structure or is dealt a force structure that they must then operate within, and they're only looking at the tactics side of the house.
Tactics associated with a given set.
Exactly. So if I can control the number of destroyers and cruisers, this is what I'm looking at. If I can't, and I'm more an operational level advisor, then I have to use these tactics. What do I do here? So kind of two different sides of the same situation, and coming up with some different recommendations for that.
And so how did you split up the different contributions? I mean, with 19 people, did you break up in smaller groups or focused on particular areas, or how did that work?
We did, yes, sir. So we actually split based on our strengths and what we bring to the group. We had quite a few individuals coming from the Marine Corps and other land-based armed forces from other nations as well, so they actually were able to give us some of their expertise in that region. As you know, coming from the maritime side, we really didn't think that we would be able to focus on those areas, but they brought that level of knowledge that really helped us out. And then we also divided not only based on our operational experience, but also on our academic background. So we had personnel from the operations research department. We have personnel that are excellent with doing statistical analysis. We have modeling experience, so we were able to split the group based on their strengths, not only based on what they've done in their military careers, but also what either program they're pursuing at NPS or what they've been able to do in their previous educational backgrounds.
And all this will come together in June.
We hope.
In one large report and briefing. Is that
Yes,
right?
sir.
Yes, sir.
Oh boy, I look forward to that.
As do we.
I also know, just for the audience, that this project is sponsored by our Navy staff in Washington, D.C. They're always interested in what our students come up with, mainly because, in a way, because you have tactical operational experience in the very environment that you're studying, and you're not shackled by some of the political baggage that comes with the Washington, D.C. Beltway. And so we have a tendency to be more innovative on the West Coast instead of legislative. So because of that, I think your project will be well received. So have you got any great insights to date that you can share with us as far as this particular problem?
Sure. Some of the early analysis that we've seen, like you mentioned, we're submitting it shortly, so I don't want to give it all away.
Yeah, okay.
Some of the stuff that we've seen so far, which was really interesting, was the effect of jamming, the effect of using the tactic of jamming, where we may be...
So jamming meaning you're sending out an electronic signal to interfere with somebody's radar or sensors.
Exactly,
Okay.
yes, sir. And so the way that we've kind of modeled it in summary, if I can do it in 15 seconds or less, is that we've kind of shown how the red or the enemy force progresses through a particular kill chain. So they need to identify what they're looking for, they need to then target what they're looking for, and then they need to engage it. So what we actually found was jamming is a tactic that affects both their finding and their identification, as well as the actual targeting sequence. And so what might benefit the enemy in a targeting scenario or a finding scenario where they say, hey, there's a lot of, like you mentioned,
Right.
EMI or electronic emissions coming from this area. I know something's over there. But if it hurts them in the targeting phase, if it hurts them in the time when they actually need to acquire that target and get missiles off the rail, during that time, the other forces might be able to back you up and might be able to shoot at the same enemy and remove him from the fight before he's able to get missiles off against blue.
Because you can't actually target
Exactly,
what
yes,
you're
sir.
looking
So
for. He knows there's something there because you're putting so much energy
Yes,
out.
sir. So that was interesting. Is that we expected to see both a positive and a negative associated with jamming, whereas you turn it on, it might accelerate them through the find sequence but hurt them in the targeting sequence. What is the net outcome? What is combining those two things? What do we expect to see? And we really didn't have an expectation. And what we've come to find out is that by being able to delay them and disrupt them in the targeting sequence, you end up with a scenario where we come out ahead as a defensive role as well as an offensive role. Some of the stuff that we're doing where we're launching weapons preemptively as soon as they turn on our fire control radar, as soon as they start to look at us as a threat and get missiles off the rail, if we're able to engage them as well,
Right.
we increase our survivability.
Well, I look forward to seeing that report. Sure. Now, Sydney is going to go to Spain because she's never been to Spain. Next, after graduation, Chris, where are you going to go?
I'm going to go to the Carl Vinson. I'm going to a carrier as a tactical action officer.
So a tactical action officer that actually works in Combat Information Center.
Yes, sir.
And helps run the battle from the carrier.
Yes, sir. So as a pilot, this is my disassociated tour. This is getting away from the cockpit again and going back and kind of serving on a ship as a tactical person within combat.
That's great. So, yeah. You'll be that much stronger pilot when you get back. Well, Chris, Sydney, thank you very much for being on the show. Thank you for your service as well, past and future. I look forward to seeing both of you advance in the ranks, and you can write back to me and see how you're doing.
Will do, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for joining us for this segment of the Naval Postgraduate School Foundation YourTown television program. My name is Jeff Kline, and please join us for future segments, and we'll talk about interesting faculty and students and what they're doing for their research and what they're doing for our country.